Hello everyone. Hello and welcome to our local woodland at Balnahinch Estate. And sometimes, even though where we live is absolutely beautiful, sometimes you just need to be with the trees. And we've come for a walk today to really soak up the green, to be out in the green, because there are so many shades of green here. If you look around, the different trees have different shades of green, and then we've got all the beautiful moss. There's ivy and ground elder sprinkled along the floor here like little stars, and it's just so rejuvenating and intoxicating and refreshing. It's just something you need to do every now and again. All these beautiful beeches and birches and lime and oak. It's just fantastic. It makes you feel like you're in the old Ireland, because in the past all of this area was completely forested. And if we're talking about Balnahinch Estate, it used to belong to the Martin family, and they had been pushed west by Cromwellian forces. And in the 18th century, one of the Martins, Richard, grew up here as a little boy, and he just absolutely loved nature, loved all the animals, and he grew up to become the founder of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. In fact, there's a little lake up the road with a small prison on it, and if he ever found any of his staff or tenants harming or hurting animals, he shoved them into that prison until they reflected on their cruel behaviour and were ready to come back out again before he released them. So it's amazing to think that this beautiful place inspired that sense of connection and care and kindness towards our relations. What I love about forests is you've got the entire cycle of life and death here. We've got all this decaying wood, the old branches, these old stumps that become covered in moss and ferns, and then you get all these young little trees that are coming up, trying to get up through to the light. It's so beautiful. It reminds us that life is a constant, even when there's death. We've got fungi here as well. I wish I knew what these mushrooms were for. I suspect they are edible, but I'm not 100%. It's amazing that you cannot really cut off from trees. No matter how urbanized you become or how removed from nature, there's something about going and hugging a tree, and lots of people they can't help themselves, because it's in our nature to be at one with trees, because they're our kind of grandparents in a way, because they hold so much wisdom because of their age. They've seen so much and they've got so much knowledge to share. And that's why they were so highly regarded in our ancient past. You know, in Celtic law in Ireland, trees were protected and very, very highly regarded. And they were categorised as either nobles of the wood or commoners of the wood. So the nobles of the wood would be those trees that had a lot to offer. So for example, the oak would have a lot to offer because of its very hard timber. So it would be great for building. All the trees provide food and medicine of different kinds. And the categorisation would go from something like the mighty oak right down to ivy and ferns. So the whole woodland was a family or a community. And it's suppose it's just like us, but if you were to damage a tree in any way, under the Brehon law, there was a lot of compensation to pay. And in those days, the currency was cattle. So if you, for example, took bark from an oak tree, you were only supposed to take a little bit so that the tree wouldn't be damaged. If you took any more, you would be fined. You'd have to pay a cow or 2 cows or 3 cows, depending on the damage that you did. When we look at the forest floor, we see rot and decaying matter, but so much life coming out of it. We've even got shamrocks here, lots and lots of shamrocks growing on this little old rotten tree stump that is covered in moss. It's the most beautiful little universe. It's just gorgeous. That's what I love. It's so magical. You can look at this and you know there's no doubt that there are land spirits, tree spirits, elementals all living here. Because why wouldn't they when it's so beautiful and green? It's life. And here's my favourite tree, one of my favourites, the holly tree. We associate it with midwinter because it's evergreen, but it's actually on the tree calendar, it's July, August time, and it's associated with Lunacy. But Lunacy is, of course, a celebration of Lou's foster mother and her death. So I suppose in a way it's still in the right place because it's representing the fact that from death comes life, and she had a wonderful life and then she died. So there's that complete circle of life, death and rebirth. It's a constant common theme within Celtic mythology and Celtic lore. The calendar starts after Samhain, which is the new year. So between October, November time, we start with the yew, which is a tree very much associated with death because it's quite toxic. And then as the year moves round, different trees come into their own. So we move towards birch, which is the tree of new beginnings and fresh starts. We move a bit further on, we've got willow. We move further on, we've got holly in the summertime. We've got hawthorn at the beginning of summer. We move on towards the autumn equinox. We've got elder. It's just so interesting the way, for me, the cosmos of the woodland kind of mirrors back to people their existence as well. So, for example, the birch, tree of new beginnings, is like when we were children. And why do you think children used to be birched? It was to put manners on them and teach them how to behave. And then we go into hawthorn, which is like a pubescent. It's all that sexual energy is coming, the need to go out and procreate. That's just what hawthorn is symbolic of. So then you move on and you come towards the elder, which obviously is an elder as well as being the elder. And it has all that feminine wisdom as we approach that menopausal time for women, which would be autumn. And then we carry on and we get back to the yew. So it's that constant reflection of life, death and rebirth, and the recycling of everything. There are a number of stumps, so those trees are dead, but there's so much life in them and on them that it teaches us the lesson that there is no such thing really as dead and gone, because that tree stump is living on by being a home or a host to so many myriad life forms. There'll be insects, there's different types of moss. The forest floor teaches us not to fear death, because where there is death, there is life. It just keeps going, it just keeps going. When I stand among trees like this, I feel as if I'm in a sacred temple. In fact, the cathedral at Chartres is reputed to have been built on the site of a sacred oak grove, where people, according to the Romans, worshipped nature. But I would argue that they weren't worshipping nature, they were communing with and communicating with and expressing gratitude to. That was the purpose of the grove. And when you stand here in a grove of trees, you do feel gratitude and you do feel a sense of communion with something ancient and wise and altogether just wonderful. It's just so good for the heart. This is such a lovely place to visit, such a beautiful woodland to walk in. We can hear the tinkling of the stream, you can hear the birds. It's so peaceful. You feel like you should whisper because it's such a sacred place. But it reminds me that Connemara was densely forested like this up to 200 or 300 years ago. In fact, it was so densely forested that if Richard Martin was trying to escape from his creditors in the city, he would come back here to Connemara and they wouldn't be able to find him. And what they had to do was go by sea around the coast and come up the river to see could they catch him, by which time he'd be heading back to Galway through the forest. But it's shocking, it's absolutely shocking to think that from being so densely forested that the English under the Tudors referred to the Irish as wood churls because they lived in the forest. And now I think we've got less, definitely, I think we've only got about 11% or maybe even less of woodland in Ireland. So that's why we are planting so many trees at home. We'll never achieve this, but it will at least be something towards putting something back into Connemara. So I'm just getting my fix of hugs before I head off. And I would just say, in a time when there's so much fear that people are living through, and the antidote to fear is love, when you come to a woodland or a forest, you can only feel love because it is just the most beautiful place. You have to love it. And so I'm going to have a few hugs and I will see you next time. And if you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and hit the bell as well. And see you next time.